50,000 soldiers marched into the desert, and not a single one ever returned. No bodies, no weapons, no battlefield. This isn't a legend. It's written history. In 525 BC, the Persian Empire was the undisputed master of the known world, a titan forged in fire and conquest. Its king, Cambyses II, son of Cyrus the Great, had just achieved the unthinkable. He had conquered Egypt, a civilization whose gods and pharaohs were ancient when Persia was still a tribe. But victory on the battlefield did not grant him dominion over the soul of Egypt. Deep in the unforgiving western desert, hundreds of miles from the new seat of Persian power, stood the Oracle of Amun at Siwa, a sacred site believed to be a direct line to the gods themselves. Its priests, guardians of millennia-old traditions, refused to bend the knee. They publicly denounced Cambyses as an illegitimate ruler, a blasphemer. In the ancient world, this was no mere political protest. It was a declaration of war against a king who saw himself as a god. An insult from a mortal king Cambyses could punish, but a challenge from a god? That had to be erased. Herodotus, the great historian, tells us Cambyses flew into a great rage. He didn't negotiate. He didn't seek to win their favor. He made a decision fueled by pure hubris. He ordered the Oracle of Amun to be utterly destroyed, its priests scattered, its temples torn down to the last stone. And to carry out this act of divine retribution, he dispatched an army so immense, so powerful, that its very existence was a statement of his own omnipotence. The number recorded in the annals of history is staggering: 50,000 men. This was not a small raiding party or a contingent of colonial peacekeepers. It was a full-scale invasion force, the best of the Persian military machine. Thousands of heavily armed infantry, the backbone of his legions. Elite archers whose arrows could blot out the sun. And most critically, they were veterans, hardened by the Egyptian campaign, loyal to their king. This raises the most terrifying question of all. Why risk a force of this size and quality? Not against a rival empire, but against a temple in the middle of nowhere. What was Cambyses so afraid of? The army marched west from the Nile, a river of steel flowing into a sea of sand. They reached the last known bastion of civilization, the Karga Oasis, resupplied, and then turned their faces toward Siwa. They marched toward the home of a god they meant to kill. And then, they vanished. One day, a force capable of toppling kingdoms was there. The next, the desert was empty. The sand kept its secrets. What happened after that final march is where history ends and the true mystery begins. This is where the mystery truly begins. For weeks, then months, the Persian Empire waited for news of victory, for a triumphant messenger to emerge from the west. But from the desert there came only silence. A silence so profound it was louder than any battle cry. Ancient historians were just as confused as we are today. They knew an army had been sent. They knew it never returned. And they knew something catastrophic and unnatural had happened in that void. The Greek historian Herodotus, writing decades later, provides the only detailed explanation. He wasn't there, but he recorded the stories he heard from the people who lived on the desert's edge. According to them, after 7 days of marching, a wind rose from the south, a sudden and violent tempest. Not a common storm, but a simoom, a poison wind. He describes a wall of sand, a reddish monster that rose from the horizon, blotting out the sun and turning day into an apocalyptic twilight. The army, marching in perfect formation, was caught completely exposed in the open. Imagine the scene. The roar of the wind swallowing the screams of men and horses, the air so thick with sand you couldn't see the man next to you. They were buried alive where they stood. Within hours, the shifting dunes had completely erased a force of 50,000. If true, this would be one of the deadliest natural disasters in all of military history. An entire invasion force, the pride of an empire, erased not by enemy swords, but by the environment itself. It's a powerful story, a cautionary tale of a king's hubris being punished by the gods of the land he conquered. But even Herodotus seemed uneasy with this explanation. It was too neat, too final. Because deserts, for all their power to conceal, are not oceans. The wind that buries is also the wind that uncovers. And that is where the story starts to fall apart under the weight of a simple question. Where are the bodies? For over 2,000 years, the story of the Lost Army has been a siren song for explorers, archaeologists, and fortune hunters. They have scoured the western desert, following ancient maps and modern satellite imagery. They came expecting to unearth a military Pompeii, a snapshot of a doomed army frozen in time. A shield here, a bronze helmet there, a legion's worth of skeletons. Yet, despite centuries of searching, nothing definitive has ever been recovered. Not a single, undisputed artifact from Cambyses' army has ever been found and verified. No battlefield, no mass grave, no unmistakable trace of 50,000 men who walked into the desert and simply ceased to exist. When the trail of evidence runs cold and turns to dust, theories are all that remain. They rise from the silence like ghosts, each one trying to explain the impossible. And for an army that vanished from the face of the earth, the theories are some of the darkest in history. The first and most accepted is the one Herodotus gave us, the storm. Supporters of this theory argue that we underestimate the sheer destructive power of the desert. A simoom isn't just a storm, it's a geological event. It can carry millions of tons of sand, burying objects not just by feet, but by meters in a matter of hours. Shifting dune fields like those in the Great Sand Sea can move dozens of feet a year, creating a constantly changing landscape. An army buried beneath such a dune might not be uncovered for 1,000 years, but critics point to a simple, glaring flaw. Even the most catastrophic modern disasters, plane crashes in remote mountains, ships sinking in the deep ocean, leave traces. Wreckage signals, debris fields. An army of 50,000 men, with its thousands of tons of metal armor, iron weapons, bronze shields, and supply wagons, represents a colossal amount of material. For all of it to vanish without a single, verifiable trace defies probability. This leads to the second theory. The army wasn't lost to nature, but to men. Some historians believe the story of the Sandstorm was a cover, a legend to mask a military catastrophe. They argue the army was ambushed. The western desert was not entirely empty. It was home to nomadic tribes who knew its secrets, its hidden wells, its deadly traps. These warriors, though outnumbered, would not have needed to face the Persian machine in open battle. They could have used guerrilla tactics, picking off scouts, poisoning water sources, and luring the massive army deeper into waterless terrain. A force dying of thirst is not a disciplined army. It's a panicked mob. In this scenario, the soldiers would have perished in scattered groups over 100 square miles, their bodies and equipment stripped by the victors and buried in countless small hidden graves. It would explain the silence and the lack of a single massive grave site. But the third theory is the darkest of all, for it suggests the enemy wasn't the sand or the tribes, but the king himself. Cambyses II is recorded as a paranoid and cruel ruler, prone to fits of rage and madness. What if the army or its popular commander posed a political threat? What if Cambyses feared a coup? Some speculate the expedition was a death sentence from the start. A calculated act of betrayal where a loyal general was given secret orders to march the army into an inescapable part of the desert and abandon it. The desert itself would be the executioner, and the king's hands would remain clean. 50,000 men sent to their deaths not to destroy a temple, but to secure a tyrant's throne. The storm, the ambush, the betrayal. 3 stories, each born from the same unnerving silence. None can be proven, and none can be dismissed. And that leaves us with one final, haunting question. In a world of science and satellite imagery, why does a 2,500-year-old mystery still hold such power over us? 2,500 years later, the desert still hasn't spoken. Its silence is the only answer it has ever given. Why does this story endure? In an age where we have mapped the globe and peered into the farthest reaches of space, why are we still haunted by this empty space on the map of history? Because the story of Cambyses' lost army is about more than just a military blunder. It is a terrifying reminder of a fundamental truth. History is not just about what is recorded, but about what is erased. Empires rise and fall, their chronicles written by the victors. But what happens when there is no victor? When the record simply stops? When the ink dries and the next page is forever blank? The army's disappearance confronts us with the unnerving possibility that the past is not a complete story. It is a ruin, and some of its chambers are permanently sealed. We are left staring into an absence, a void in our collective memory. And that absence is more terrifying than any monster or villain, because it cannot be fought. It can only be felt, and within that silence, we forget the true cost. We speak of 50,000 men as a single number, a statistic for a history lesson. But it wasn't a number that marched into the sand. It was 50,000 individuals. They had names, they had faces. They were sons who promised their mothers they would return, fathers who would never see their children again, friends who swore to stand by each other. They had lives filled with the same mundane hopes and fears that we have today. And then they were gone, not defeated in a blaze of glory, not remembered as heroes who fell in a great battle. They were simply erased, wiped from the ledger of existence so completely that they became a ghost story, a whisper on the wind. Their legacy is not a monument, but a question mark. If this story stayed with you, comment which lost army or forgotten disaster I should cover next. Like the video if this shocked you. Save it to rewatch later. And subscribe, because this channel uncovers the history the world tried to forget.